Up to you.
Oh, 11 presentation. Almost done.
Very good.
أنا عشان يعني ممكن يكون ما في حتة واقعة. Hello everybody and Ramadan Kareem. Ms. Mina Khalid Hamza, and I want to come on here and present about ICE and its impact on immigration. And I really felt that it was important to touch on this topic. To talk, okay.
Working. Alhamdulillah. Go ahead.
Okay. Um, Okay, sorry about that. So the reason why I thought it was important to come up and touch on this topic is because right now, especially as Muslims and as Sudanese people, we are put in a place where we no longer feel safe in the country that we have been living for so many years. So many people have immigrated here like decades ago, and now all of a sudden they feel unsafe in the place that they live. And I just wanted to explain why that is and what we can do to further help that. So, thanks. Okay, so these are the things I'm going to be touching up upon. So, first, I'm going to talk about an overview on what ICE even is and its background and history. I'm going to explain what an asylum seeker is versus an immigrant. I'm going to explain why people immigrate here without legal documentation or with like illegally. I'm going to explain Donald Trump's current goals because everything has changed in regards to ICE ever since he has come into office. I'm going to talk about the rights that have been violated by ICE, all our constitutional rights that have been violated. I'm going to talk about real stories that have happened where people's rights have been violated and people have passed away due to this, unfortunately. I'm going to talk about the budget that has been spent, that is going to be spent on ICE this year and has been spent, and what the priorities are of the current United States government. I'm going to talk about the detention centers and the different positions people are put in that are inhumane and they're treated as if they're animals. And then I'm going to talk about some political potential solutions that we can have moving forward. Okay, so first I'm going to explain what ICE is. So ICE stands for the United Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and what their job is to crack down on illegal immigration. So people who come into the United States without the right paperwork or without or the right way, basically. So they rather than uh, state or federal law where like if you break the law you'd be taken to jail or a federal prison, if you enter the United States illegally and they find out, you will just be, rather than taken to a prison, you'll be taken to back to your country or deported. So okay. Okay, and then now I'm going to explain a little bit of background and history. So, ICE was founded and created in 2003, and the reason why it was created in the first place was after 9/11, where we had a terrorist attack in New York City. And so they basically manage who enters or decides to stay in the country, and the point of it, their goal was to ensure Americans' public safety because they believe like those people are criminals and that they're a harm to the United States. And they treated minority groups, which mostly Middle Easterners and Muslims, they treated them with lots of discrimination after it was created and still continue to do so. So I have a question that I'd like to hear from someone from the audience, like what they think. So how long do you think it does right now? How long does it take on average to become a U.S. citizen currently in the time we're living in right now? Yes? That is yes, that's correct actually. Like 5 to 10 years. And that yeah, good job. And that like could be a really long time for a lot of people and I'll explain why that question was relevant in a little bit. So first, I'm going to explain to you guys what the difference is between an asylum seeker versus an immigrant. So an asylum seeker is a person who is seeking protection by a country that they have entered to, like, as a political refugee. And a refugee is someone who has been forced to leave their home country in order to escape war, persecution, or a natural disaster. For example, someone who's escaping the war in Sudan and hoping to come into the United States would be considered a refugee, so they would apply as an asylum seeker. And an immigrant is just someone who simply is basically just the action of coming to live permanently in a new country. So just coming from another country to permanently live here with all the necessary legal steps, like going to an immigration court and hearing and getting all the correct paperwork and a green card and all of that. So I have another question. How many asylums do you guys think are accepted yearly? And I mean based on percentages. So if anyone wants to try to answer that. Just a guess. Just a guess. Yes? 30? That's a good guess, but it's actually lower than that. Right now, it is 19% of asylums that are accepted. And so that plays a huge role on why people come into this country illegally in the first place. So that goes into what I was just mentioning. Why don't people come the right way or without all the paperwork or without going to an immigration court? So again, there's only a 19% chance of their asylum being accepted, which means they could be escaping war and they go and try to enter the country the correct way and they're unable to do so. So they have to go the other route. Like if you're in a life or death situation, then probably signing paperwork is not their first priority. It's probably to maybe keep themselves safe or keep their family safe. And so another reason, yeah, would be to escape violent conflict or like a dangerous place. Again, like going back to what's happening in Sudan, maybe a lot of people would enter or the country without the right paperwork because they're scared that they will maybe die or maybe they're scared for their family's lives, and that is a completely, I think, valid reason. And maybe they seek economic opportunity when legal routes are limited or slow. So there are a lot of immigration attorneys for all the cases that we have, because it is a goal of ICE right now to detain and deport 1 million people a year, but we only have around 600,000 immigration lawyers all over the United States. And so that would take way too long to get people from detention centers back to their home country. So many would have to stay without them even knowing whether they are legal US citizens or not. So, and also another thing I want to touch on is that it is not a technical crime to enter a country illegally, because in order for something to be considered a federal crime, then they would have to be taken to a federal prison. But this is something that is like outside of, federal like grasp. So then like they would be taken back to their country essentially. So I want to talk about like the huge role that the Trump administration has had on this. So Donald Trump has made it extremely clear since he was put into office that that it is his number one priority from the start to crack down on illegal immigration above all, or all other issues that we have in the United States or in the world. And there already have been, so 73% of people that are booked into ICE's custody have no criminal record. And his goal was to detain all criminals. So I think it's just a little bit, not true to his word, I guess. Um, and so what he did is he immediately ordered ICE to be stationed into a lot of huge major cities like Minneapolis and Minnesota, for example. And he immediately put in a lot of discriminatory laws, which like people are right now people are able to be detained based on how they look, based on their skin color, based on what language they speak, etc. So if an ICE officer was in your city and he sees you, for example, wearing a hijab, or he sees that you are or he hears that you are speaking in Arabi, that is enough of a reason for ICE to take you into their custody because they believe that that is enough of like probable cause in order to detain you for thinking that you are an illegal immigrant. And we have had so many immigrants all over. Immigration is how the United States was started. So I think just detaining people just based on their appearance just kind of is a way of going backwards in history. So there's just always constant like um, dehumanization currently as well because it is a legal term to call an immigrant or someone who has entered the country without documentation as an alien. That is the legal term. And an alien is basically someone who isn't human. So if they're treating they're treating these people as if they're non-human, and they now could look at us in a lens where they believe that we are non-human. And I think that is just not right so many considering how long we have been here as well, and how a lot of us were born here as well, but in their eyes, they still see us as these like non-human. So I also want to talk about the budget that has been spent on ICE, and I'll explain why that's relevant. So the 2026 budget for U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement, it reflects like a massive, massive increase in funding. Like like every single president that has spent money on um, law enforcement in general, whether it's the police, whether it's military, whether it's ICE. This is the largest funding that has been put ever. And this act was called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and it was um, and they put in $85 billion budget for ICE spending, which is the most for every law enforcement ever, which is around $21.8 billion per year. And I don't think that it is necessary to put that much money into law enforcement when there are so many other issues that we should be focusing on, and especially because ICE has been around since 2003 and that large of a budget was not needed. So I don't understand why it's needed as of right now. Um, so right now I'm going to talk about their priorities also regarding money. So the United States is already in trillions of dollars in debt, and we are now spending $85 billion on this law enforcement. And you constantly hear different um, higher people in power in government talk about how there's not enough money to maybe help for like the homelessness crisis, maybe any aid for other countries in need, such as Palestine, such as Sudan, such as maybe Ukraine or Congo, and they constantly say that there is not enough money for this. Um, they also say that they don't have enough money for asylum seekers. Even though there are 19% of asylums that are accepted, they do have the money to make that percentage a little higher, even if it's 50%, and help the people that are in need, help the people that are attempting to enter their country, so that way they could enter legally. But instead, their priority is to then continue to dehumanize these people. They could also use this money to help the immigrants that are awaiting citizenship. So these people are awaiting to go the right way, and these people are still not receiving the help that they need because we are using the budget for things that we don't need. Talk about all the different constitutional rights that have been violated. So the Constitution was initially created to protect all of our rights, to make sure that we feel safe in where we live. Whether you're an immigrant, whether you are born here, it's made to protect our rights. So we have 10 Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments, and those are created to protect our personal safeties. And I found that 8 out of 10 of those Bill of Rights have already been violated by ICE as of 2025 and 2026. And I'm going to expand further on that. So first we have the First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech, right to religion, press, assembly. And that has already been violated because so many people that go out to protest or speak their mind have ICE uses that as a way to go and just detain those people, even though they have the right to peaceful protest. Another one is the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, which basically means that you have the right to carry a concealed gun with you, and that's a right that's like granted to all of us. And that was violated in the case of Alex Preddy, which I'm going to be talking about more in this next slide. The case of Alex Preddy, where he was believed to be carrying a gun on him, and he lives in the state of Minnesota where it's legal to carry a firearm, whether it's concealed or non-concealed. He can have an open carry firearm. But they saw him and saw him as a threat, and they also believed that he looked to be not from the United States. So then they used that as an excuse to then shoot him to death. Um, Another right that was violated was the Fourth Amendment, which is no unreasonable searches or seizures. And everybody and ICE has just been going around and searching people without probable cause, because in order to search someone's maybe vehicle or search their home, you need to have probable cause. And so they have just been looking through who might be a potential immigrant in this country and just knocking right at their door and entering without consent and without warrants and without all of that, which also goes into the Fifth Amendment, which is the rights of the accused, which is due process and no self-incrimination. And due process is basically the right to go to a court and defend yourself. So you can, like, you have to go through all of the steps to make sure you can defend yourself against a crime that they believe you have committed. So these people have, most of these people have not had the right to due process, which means that they have been detained by ICE and taken to detention centers or deported right away without the right to defend themselves at all. Next was the Sixth Amendment, which is a right to a speedy public trial, which is basically kind of tying into the fifth one, which where they had no right to go to a trial, immigration court, period. Um, and were just taken into custody straight away without being able to defend themselves. And a lot of those people were found to be U.S. citizens after staying in these terrible conditions for so long. This one is no cruel or unusual punishment. And a lot of these people, they have been treated so terribly on the streets, being shot down, being beat, just because they look to be different, and they look to be criminals, and they have no evidence of this at all. The Ninth Amendment is people have rights beyond those listed, which means there are other rights listed in the Ninth Amendment, but one of those rights was the right to privacy. And a lot of people's privacy rights have been violated. For example, one privacy that you have is the privacy to not share what you have on your phone, such as messages or photos and all of that. And right now they have created a lot of different apps and softwares where they can then enter into your phone without you knowing. They could see your messages, they could see what you have on your phone without anybody knowing, and they put these into certain like regular everyday apps that you can download, and then they can then track where you are, and then they can find you that way. And that, I think, is a direct violation of your privacy. And lastly, is the 10th Amendment, which is powers that are not given to the federal government, to the states or the people. And so they have been pressured, which means that state laws are separated from federal laws. So each state has separate laws. For example, what I mentioned earlier, that Minnesota laws allow you to carry an open carry firearm, but a lot of other states do not allow that. And so they have been putting a lot of pressure on the states to uh, set on certain immigration laws for people, like in asylum courts and all of that. They've been putting pressure on them, and that is also a violation of people's rights. Okay, so I did mention earlier with regards to the Second Amendment, the case of Alex Preddy. So Alex Preddy was a 37-year-old ICU nurse for the United States Veteran Affairs. So what he did is he aided the United States veterans, and he was still put in this deadly position. So if he could be put in a position like that, so could any of us. He was shot multiple times on January 26th of 2026. So this was not even a month ago. This is just an ongoing thing, and it's not stopping. This was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which then again allows you to carry an open firearm. So he was carrying a legal concealed firearm, and Minnesota again allows him to do that. And they believed him to be a threat when he was not reaching for his firearm. They stated that he was reaching for his firearm, but body cam footage, which is now required for immigration officers, showed that that was not the case, and none of those officers faced any legal like repercussions. They didn't face any consequences for that, and basically, I feel like that is extremely terrifying, that they can just go and kill US citizens, non-US citizens, people who are seen to be threats just because they believe so, and face no consequences. Another one is the case of Liam Ramos. So again, Trump said that his goal was to detain criminals. And if we're talking about criminals, I don't believe that a 5-year-old little boy can be seen as a criminal. So he was detained on January 23rd, 2026, not long before, 3 days before the shooting of Alex Preddy. And they used this little boy as bait to detain his parents, who were asylum seekers, meaning that his parents were attempting to go the legal right way to be able to enter this country. And but the process has not gone fully through yet, since there's so much going on with regards to immigration right now. And they used this child, they basically kidnapped this child and took him into a Texas detention center as bait, so that the parents can then come and then they can then detain those parents. So his family did enter the United States legally, as their attorney was stating, and but then the Department of Homeland Security, or the people that ICE is under, they they call his father an illegal alien, which again is it's a dehumanizing term, which is then calling his father a non-human. So I'm going to talk about these detention centers. And this 5-year-old Liam was taken to one of these detention centers where all of these things have taken place. So in these detention centers, there's overcrowding. So like if a detention center has a capacity that could fit 2,000 people, there's like 3,000 people in there, which means nobody is sleeping in their own beds. There are families sleeping in one bed. They do not get medical care. There's not enough medical care for these people. So if you are disabled, if you are sick, you're not getting the correct medical care that you need. And many people have died under these conditions. There's delayed treatment. So if you need treatment right away, you are about to probably pass away. Your treatment still might be delayed because there are so many people in those detention centers. As you could see in this image, there's not a lot of breathing room. There's lots of unsafe conditions for children. For example, there have been many cases where we have seen in these detention centers there are traces of mold in the ceilings, and that could be extremely harmful, especially to young children, and can cause long-term effects. There is a prolonged length of detention with no due process, meaning that they are overstaying the legal amount that they're able to stay. For example, for some detention centers, they can be held for about 72 hours. Some of these people are held for 2 weeks, and they are U.S. citizens or not. And a lot in these cases, they are U.S. citizens. So again, this means that it could happen to any one of us, whether we are immigrants, whether you are not. These detention centers are extremely unsanitary, so it creates very unsafe environments for you to be inhaling all of that air. And they're also treated very animalistically. So they're being dragged out of these centers, they're being thrown in, they're being put in, they're being separated from families, they're just treated and caged as if they're animals. And so to end this off, I would like to explain what are some future steps we could take. So you can like attend like different elections. So if you are able to vote, it is very important to vote, and because I believe that every single voice counts, it's important to vote on elections, also especially regarding immigration policy, whether it directly affects you or not. So people can also volunteer, donate, or participate in awareness campaigns. I think spreading awareness is extremely important, and again, every voice matters. Um, and it's super, super crucial and important to use your voice for those people who can't, because so many people um probably will like risk their life trying to use their voice, and some people are too afraid to do that. So I think it's super important to raise your voice for people who are unable to do so. Thank you so much. I also wanted to say, I wanted to ask if anybody had any questions or needed clarification on anything that I have mentioned. Yeah. Yes, they're immediately deported back to where they believe they have came from, but a lot of cases have shown there are a few cases where people have been taken to the wrong country, so it kind of shows that they don't really take into consideration these people's lives or anything. Um, so they are taken back to where they believe they have first came from originally. Like there's probably like you could find records of where they used to live and everything, or like just taken back to like facilities in their country. Yes. I'm not sure about the Sudanese community specifically. I don't believe there have been a lot specifically regarding Sudanese people, but I know that Muslims and people of color are extremely targeted as of right now, and they are seen as threats. Anything else?
Minna, you've done a good job, Minna. We appreciate that and we're proud of you.
Thank you so
And you
much.
must have spent a lot of time researching all this. But I have a question. I'm not a law expert, but as I was looking at the human rights and the amendments, I see that amendment number 3 is missing. Amendment number 7 is missing. Have you noticed anything as you're searching why they're missing?
Down is because we have 10 Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, and I was stating all of so 8 out of 10 of our Bill of Rights have been violated. So I put down those 8 out of 10, which is why I was missing those 2, because those rights have not been violated. So I put down the 8 that have been violated. Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
My question is how
معلش انا حوقف التسجيل عشان بعد تكون اوبن مايك ان شاء الله.